Miss Blackjack, dear.
Okay. Yeah.
You are the most prolific scriptwriter I
Hi, Wes.
know. Welcome, Wisp. I've been wanting to ask this question for a long time. What is the secret to your productivity? How do you just crank it all out?
Hmm. Well, there are a few things, but I'll go ahead and say the most important, then go on to the minor things that have helped recruit in the past. But you remember me explaining to you how I have that huge inferiority complex?
Yes.
Yes, that ties into a lot of my motivations, as in I always want to do better than I previously had because like I said how I go through phases where I don't feel like my work was up to par, and that mixed with like the creativity of like new ideas and new things I want to try, it's it's a really odd sense of competitiveness that I'm always trying to one up myself with this, but it's what gives me my drive. Um, but yeah, I always do best when I'm competitive, and in this case, I'm competitive with myself.
Crippling insecurity is the best motivator. I can back that
Mhm.
1000%. Uh, this is more general motivation. Being so driven to have a positive image, to say escape existential despair by convincing yourself you have an impact on the world. That this is what drives achievers.
Yeah,
Legitimately. Um,
it's usually the positive manifestation of negative personality traits that causes these sort of profound, like, you know, drives, motivations, talents. Some of the best are because you put your negative traits to positive use.
yeah. So, all right, you have this crippling insecurity that drives you to write great scripts. How do you go into a script? Is there a structure you make sure you follow?
Like it used to be, like where I just did by induction, deepener, main suggestions, and deducer. But there are so many different files that I try to do nowadays. Loop files, subliminal files, modular files, full files, and so I generally don't have a structure. I have an idea, and I have a how to get there. I don't think about it much more than that in terms of structure.
But say you're a new guy who wants to go ahead and turn out their first script, and they need some guidance on structure, key components to hit, key things that make an effective script. What would you
Um,
recommend structure wise?
yeah, structure wise, make an outline. Like that's the simplest thing for people that need that. But what I personally suggest for anybody, regardless of their need for structure, is to learn the hypnotic language, learn what you want to say to accomplish what goals, or what goals you're trying to accomplish in the first place. And gradually you'll have such a good sense of hypnosis that when you're writing inductions, deepers, main suggestions, that you write it from the top down. You already have the language mastered, you just paint the picture with that language.
Hypnotic language. Tell us more about that. How do you master that? What do you pay attention
Uh,
to?
um, hmm. Lots of things. Usually I go for the more explicit side, like, during inductions, I try to say, it's good to be in this mindset. Or, it's now good, or it's now fine to enjoy relaxing deeper. You'll find that your mind is more open and accepting. Of course, the final goal of any script is to have the mind open to the suggestions and susceptible to what you're about to say. Relaxing is secondary. It just primes like a relaxed body primes the mind to be more accepting, but it does nothing more. Oh, well, it does do help with dissociation as well, but um, once again, relaxation isn't completely necessary. You want to guide their mindsets to using hypnotic language that you see from other scripts.
Yeah. And so hypnotic language, I was talking about this yesterday. Connotation. How do certain words make you feel? And just
Yeah,
understanding how words make you feel, identifying how certain words make you feel, and using words that you know make you feel a certain way to elicit that ideal emotion. And something you said earlier, which is, hey Jade, I don't really have a structure. I think about the goal of the file and I just write something custom to that. I agree
yeah.
with that completely. I see hypnosis not as at its fundamental level, just another lens for self-aware manipulation. Just like tulpomancy is self-aware plurality or self-aware um, religion or other spiritual experiences, hypnosis is accepting that words have power and can influence your thoughts and feelings, and looking at manipulation in a positive lens and going, I am manipulating my mind and manipulating my emotions to change them. And so then the only component of a hypnosis file you need is effective manipulation. If causing the desired effects. Let's see. As far as script writing structure goes, even early on, I saw the structure that others had, and as soon as I realized that that wasn't necessarily the best way to do it, that it honestly was looking at your scripts, Blackjack, that made me go, your early scripts, these are so structured. This is holding some of the scripts back. I shouldn't be so structured. I need to take a step back and go, how can I make every single different part of the file connect and be as cohesive as possible? I think of the goal of the file. What am I trying to achieve with this file? How do I make the induction go towards that goal? How do I make the awakener go towards that goal? How do I make the suggestions part of this coherent theme that binds every single other part of the script together? And then how can I use the same words in different parts of the script to give multiple layers of meaning? I shared some of Professor Pig's work with you, Blackjack, where early in the induction he goes, open your mouth and relax as part of the induction.
Actually, I think that in Professor Pig thing, he was referencing Mr. Daniels at that time. And his own thing is like, I'm going to teach you a new set of triggers, implying that's the triggers that the trigger words that he suggested would become permanent, and that they're knowledge that should be obvious to the user after he taught them.
And then Mr. Daniels' work saying, open your mouth and relax as part of the induction, and then later during the suggestion, open your mouth and relax as we go deeper, and it actually later having the lewd connotation, and just it all tying together, it makes you so it does something where it makes you feel really special. And
I could actually bring up some of my transcripts. Right. Maybe. But we'll wait on that.
No, go ahead and do that as I continue to ramble.
Okay.
And then the next thing we're going to go into is, you say you get writer's block, you're tired and you don't want to do it. How do you get yourself to just do it?
Is that a question for me to answer first, or are you going to?
You go ahead and find those transcripts. I'll go ahead and take a stab at myself first. Every single one of my scripts is, except for the Pony Identity one, every one of my scripts is a product of adapted text hypnosis sessions. It puts me on the spot. It forces me to perform. I go, all right, hey, I want to do this session with you. I know you want this session. Let's do it. And then there's no backing out. It doesn't matter how bad it is. You're going to go do it. And you're going to have basically a very rough draft at the end of that. Take out the use find and replace to delete all of the names and stuff, and you have a rough draft that's good to go. That's how I made every single file on GearHeart so far, starting putting myself on the spotlight and doing a text session. There's some mindset tricks you can use to get over with and write your first script. The first is destroy every vestige of doubt in your mind that writer's block is an actual thing that exists, because it isn't. They've done countless studies where they've gone, hey, here's a prompt, here's your deadline, do it. And they do this in a controlled laboratory. And it doesn't matter what baseline levels of motivation these people reported, they all followed the task and wrote according to the prompt. There's no such thing as writer's block. What does actually exist is performance anxiety, where you tell yourself, oh, this has to be the best script ever, it has to make everyone happy. And when you tell yourself those things, there's no way you can succeed. Like, who's going to write a script that can make everyone happy? Who can write a script that will be the best script ever? No one can. And especially not you when you're telling yourself that it has to be those things. Tell yourself that this is going to be the worst fucking script that's ever going to exist in the history of anything ever, and just write it. Get a rough draft down. Don't worry about editing. Just write, and worry about editing later. Tell yourself whatever you need to get that first draft done. The second thing is, don't write to please anyone. When I write a script, one of the things I love about the text hypno sessions is I am writing it for one person. All that matters is making this one person happy. Similarly, when I'm drafting a script, I'm not trying to please everyone. When I wrote the cure file, I had one person in mind that I was trying to help with this file. When I made the modular transformation series, I was helping Swift feel their pony body for the first time. And then what you do is, once you have that rough draft, you can go, all right, how can I make this critic proof? And you're able to do a much better job with that once you actually have a draft to work with. Blackjack, how do you personally force yourself to just do it?
Now, once again, I've had a variety of ways past. I'll say that caffeine, is one of the easy ones. Drugs is also one of the easy ones, but it's easy to do, but hard to. It actually makes things a whole lot more unstable when you do that.
We at GearHeart do not support the use of illegal drugs.
Even legal ones. It disrupts your view of reality to where you're at the time where you're under the high, to where you temporarily don't see things in terms of normal language, and that's what it helped me. But then I'd find that I'd be crippled for days after my writing ability, just because I'd burn out easier because I didn't have that what I perceived to be a higher sense of thinking. And so I'd say for any of you who are thinking drugs are a good idea to write scripts, they're not, unless you're planning on not being able to write a lot, not being able to write as well after it goes away. It'll permanently make you dependent on them in your perception to write effectively, and that's why I personally went away from those. But other methods I would say for getting motivation was, I actually disagree with you on saying that everything should tie into the main theme. It's sometimes good for really optimized scripts, and of course you want to introduce ideas that'll become important later in the script. I've seen Slut in My Head's work from Warp My Mind. They actually start with an explanation, with an essay-like explanation, and just gradually incorporate more hypnotic language into it until you're fully saying, all right, now here's the hypnotic suggestions that I've already introduced to you. Let them sink deeper into your mind. But sequential writing isn't bad. Hypnotic inductions, if you write it right, will work on most people. Just learn inductions, learn what mindsets the subject should be in, and you don't have to tie everything in together, so long as you do have them in the trance to experience it. But yeah, sequential writing is, for me, a good way that I could just get my thoughts out and not have to worry. It becomes harder later editing that out. So I feel like, Jade, you sort of presented contradictory advice, because I've been there staring at a paragraph and I'm like, I have to alter this entire thing, or just keep it how it is and just change a couple things.
What did you say that I said was contradicting?
The whole write it down to avoid the writer's block, and then have everything tie into itself meaning-wise.
Oh, well, you can do both if you outline and then understand what you're going to write.
Yes, outlines are great, and
Yeah.
this will help you with it the most.
Yeah.
But unless you're like some sort of hypnotic mastermind who knows exactly what he wants to do and like everything that he's going to incorporate at what exact times, you're not going to write that optimized script. Even I don't go for optimization the first time, the second time, or even like the third run of edits. I go for what will work.
Oh, I guess you're right. I sort of started with you need to make everything optimized, and then I waited to
No,
write the
Mr.
worst
Daniels
restaurant ever.
was a
Yeah.
person who was able to do that, and I cannot give him enough props for
Yeah.
being able
Hey,
to
you want to look at
effect.
there?
I cannot give him enough props for being that way, but that is not how you should aspire to be from the very start. I'm not even at that point, and I don't expect to get to that point for a very long time.
I gotcha. Welcome everyone who just joined. Blackjack, we just churned through our questions. I'm out of speaking points. Got anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I could just rant about the specifics of like what goes into each section.
Break it down.
All right, introduction or pre-talk or whatever you want to call it is before the induction. If you're wanting to do it full, like if you're wanting to do it full structured mode, and this will be the warnings. It'll say things, or it'll give warnings. Of course, it'll describe the contents of the file, and if hopefully presents the actual contents of the file, despite any warnings, it'll present them effectively to the targeted audience. So in the case of the pony identity solidification, this is only for people who want to express their true equestrian selves in everyday life. This is not for anybody who does not want to be a pony. So where you have the implication that, it's a desirable change for the people that want it. And of course, people who would say, oh, this, who would be fooled by the reinforcement of, hey, this is good for the targeted audience, and that they do the file anyways despite the warnings. You shouldn't have to worry about those so long as you word it correctly and as accurately as possible. I don't do it for all files. Usually I'll just start out with the induction, but if when in doubt, just describe the contents of the file in the induction, or introduction, sorry. Pre-talk would also be another word for it. Any questions on that? Because we're going to go with this section by section.
That sounds great.
One question, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
How do loop files change this?
It changes the entire dynamic. Sometimes you may have like a miniature induction, but like with a loop file, this is kind of the point in writing where you want to say, all right, you got to keep the continuity in mind, first of all. Any suggestions that you don't want repeated or anything in the introduction that you don't think would fit in a repeated file, don't include it. Find a way that it'll have like continuity with each loop. Generally, it'll, like, if you really want to structure it, you can have a brief induction sort of thing and a brief deducer sort of thing saying, if you want to wake up now, you can, and finds that you'll go even deeper next time. Deducer. Crap, I need to stop using that word. Awakener. I wonder. Good spelling, Jade. And Pat's. Did that clear it up?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Should I move on to what goes into an induction? I'll wait for Vulpes to send her message. Oh, okay, yeah. So induction, you want to get somebody into the right mindsets for hypnosis. Most people do progressive muscle relaxation. As I sort of explained earlier in the workshop, muscle relaxation is good. It helps trance a lot, but it is by no means necessary to trance or be hypnotized. I distinguish those two. I'll tell you why later. I'll explain briefly what relaxation does. Jade, do you know what the concept of priming is in psychology?
Yes.
Can you explain it? Because you would probably do so better than me.
Okay. So when you go into a session, you want to make sure that your subject knows it's going to work. And so you build something called rapport. And you basically go that, hey, whoever you are the perfect person for this file. Because of this trait that you have, this file is going to work so perfectly for you. And then you go, and then you build a rapport of yourself as a hypnotist. And you're like, yeah, I am one of the best tests in this community, and everyone that I've had a session with will tell you so, and I have a 100% success rate. Then you talk about, and then you sell the exact technique that you're going to use, and you go, we're going to use this technique, and this technique works every time, and you build this belief in their mind that what's about to happen is going to work no matter what, and the setting is perfect, and no matter what, they're perfect. And they may give you a curveball such as, I've never been able to trance. And you can go, that's not true. I've been watching you. I've been listening to you. The way I talk to you, the way you get absorbed by my voice, I can feel that you will drop like a rock and be so affected by this. Priming means that you're getting ready for them to be affected by the file. And the way you do that is building rapport. Did I fuck that up, Blackjack?
Well, priming is much more universal. It's a concept in psychology that, like, for example, if you're holding a warm mug of coffee, you're likely to be more, warm towards anybody who's speaking to you. If you're relaxed or you're in a good mood, you're primed to accept something. You're primed to accept what the other person is saying rather than arguing against it. Conversely, if you're in a bad mood or have something like displeasurable happening to you, you're less likely to be accepting. That's why relaxation works, is because it primes the mind to accept the words that's given to it, because it opens up, like, a relaxed body is a relaxed mind, essentially. That's why it works, and that's why you should, yes, confidence, rapport and confidence. In my opinion, how I build rapport is I set realistic expectations for what they should expect out of a session with me. If they haven't been successfully hypnotized before, I'd say, I'm a new person that has much experience with hypnotizing people, just like you, since I traditionally go for analyticals, and I build up like what makes me unique and what I could do for this subject. And something that I neglected to mention about the introduction, yes, the introduction, basically you build rapport and expectations for the session. That's priming. Now, Vulpes, you could talk.
On the point of building rapport and confidence, one of the things I've found in my session work that's really, really key, and also translates wonderfully and complements scripts and the overall work that you do in hypnosis, is kind of a subject. The subject is always right. A little bit outside of the scope of this conversation are different modalities and different methods and inductions, and all things being everyone's different. Everyone's neurodiversity is a little bit different, and what works on one person isn't another. But for the benefit of the next attempt, if for some reason a script doesn't take as well or something doesn't work out in a session, there's always an overall philosophy and interest that the subject is always right. Or hypnoty, whatever you'd want to use. And that confidence translates into better repeat attempts, and again, building that rapport and confidence. So it really leaves that overall success is obtainable, is something that will happen inevitably, and that leaves you a lot of latitude. But in all of the things that you've been mentioning before, it's very important, again, to have that confidence and in some ways sell yourself. Not necessarily a little too much, like avoid coercion, but definitely a confidence that's in line with your scripts, your works, and it's somewhat slightly showy. Leverage it, but it is definitely part of confidence and rapport building, and really making sure that the subjects are hypnotees are really feeling on top. And because it is one of the things that we're kind of making that mutual agreement to go forward into this world with them. So that's kind of a point I'd like to just throw out there.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
actually, what I would say is, yes, thank you very much. I always forget that part, thanking people for their important contributions. Thank you. And I would actually like to springboard off of what you said. Two important things that you want to get across when doing a session. I know we're going a little bit off topic here, but anybody can be hypnotized. You want to convince your subjects of that, and I actually unironically believe that. There's a statistic out there somewhere that it's 10 to 15 people or percent of people can't be hypnotized. I don't believe that for a second. It's just harder to hypnotize certain people. And that, going on to the second, one of the best hypnotists I know told me after a failed trance on me that any failed session is the fault of the hypnotist. Even if that wasn't true for that session, you have to convince your subject of that so that they'll trust you next time, and that you could seize that opportunity to help them get better effects.
Right, because it was something about them, it was something about you, so the only thing that needs to change is you, and that's something that's much more possible than them convincing themselves that they can change their hypnotizability between 2 points in time. Good point.
Yeah. And something I would say for like rapport building, any related conclusion that you can draw that you think would further the points of that would further your rapport with the subject and what the proper mindsets that they should believe. Like, say, the failed trance says always the faults of the hypnotist. You can go ahead and say, I will improve next time since I know now what makes you tick in some form or fashion. You can say, I now know you as a subject. I could do even better next time.
That's a good one. Vulpes, we've brought up a good amount of subjects. Did you have anything else you wanted to speak up about?
I'd like to finish at least the induction and deepener segments of my little speech, because the other parts are very much up to. Well, the deducer is easy, and it doesn't need to be anything special. The main suggestions will be largely file dependent. Just make sure you keep up. The only thing that I'll say for the main suggestions of a file for now is the subconscious, assuming the subject goes under perfect hypnotic trance, according to the work of Milton Erickson and others, the subconscious does not process the linguistic negative. So this is words like doesn't, can't, will not. Try to use what we call positive language. When in doubt, think it out. Think out how you word something to not include a linguistic negative. A direct linguistic negative, rather. It is basically in regards to the word not.
This is all about connotation. This is still the same vein of connotation, which is when you ask someone, don't think of a purple elephant, they still think of the purple elephant.
Actually, no, this is a direct linguistic handicap, is that the subconscious, if it goes on a proper trance, does not process linguistic negative. This is something that Laney Pye could tell you too. But yeah, another thing, I guess we're going in reverse order now, is, if you don't want your subject to think of something, like say, the transformation will not go wrong, or something like that, they'll think of ways that the transformation can go wrong. Instead of say, you have nothing to worry about concerning this transformation, it is always in your control. And the subject will usually process that positively and say, yes, I'm in control, nothing will go wrong. And that's the conclusion that they'll draw. Anyways, to the induction, unless there are any questions, I'll pause briefly for those.
Welcome, Bill.
By the way, it's on topic voice for anybody who wants to ask one, or just in the voice chat.
All right. I think you can take it away to the induction.
Okay, so inductions, you lead the subject into the right mindset. You can still use, linguistic negatives. Yeah, you can still make the subject think of purple, pink, whatever elephants. So long, most of the rules of what happens in the subconscious don't apply to the induction. You can use explicit English language to convey what you want them to do. And, you know, the more that you know about how hypnosis works, the more you could explicitly define this is what you should be doing. And you can, there are a lot of more advanced techniques that I don't want to go into right now, but basically you can write it like you would an essay about how you're going into trance. Contrast that with the deepener. The deepener takes their mindset and it makes them even more accepting, more susceptible to the suggestions ahead. Take it in terms of like, if you had just an induction and then a transformation segment, they'd only get like sort of consciously imposed sensations. A deepener tries to truly take something from the conscious level into the subconscious level of processing. And it says, you know, I'll give the example of the countdown, since it's the most commonly used. A countdown primes the subject's mind to be more, to go quote unquote deeper, and the basic goal is less conscious, those two words. And so when they're going down, their consciousness level is decreasing and they're accepting more of the suggestions. It's the connotations, what Jade said before, of the countdown that make a countdown work. Any questions so far, or do I go after this? I'll go into deeper detail on, you know, what I would expect out of induction deepeners. But now would be a great time to ask questions.
I think you can just go. We're all on board.
All right. Well, for inductions, and my other devices don't have internet right now, so I could only like look at the one that I just wrote. What I always do is, since deeper is a word that I'll be using a lot throughout the script, I always define it deeper as less conscious, or like more accepting, more susceptible, etc. And in induction, you want to bypass the critical factor of a subject's mind. What that means is you want them to not be consciously analyzing what you say, and sort of just accept it at face value and have it processed by that deeper level of your mind. Other things you might want to do are put in safeties, say you have full control over hypnotic trance, any suggestions that make you uncomfortable can be rejected. Safeties build rapport. They just, you know, knowing that you're safe under hypnotic trance, and then you can even turn a safety into a direct manifestation of hypnosis by saying, and now since you know that you're safe, you can sink even deeper and you'll feel more secure doing so. Other things you want to do is to have them focus on the words. Relaxation is great. It's universally understood. I explained it earlier why it works. It's a great thing to do if you have nothing else that you can think of. But yeah, you just less conscious, less analyzing, more accepting, not worrying, more susceptible, listening intently. I'm just looking through the script right now. Immersed, engaged. Yeah, those are the sort of words you want to be using.
I agree with what you said about safeties building rapport. The most effective file I've ever listened to is one by Moonbeam's student Cobalt, where the first 2 minutes of the file is just him going, these are the terms for you listening to this file. You need to... I will take care of your mind with immense care, and I need you to extend trust to me. If you don't extend trust to me, this won't work. And I'm promised, and just talking about this, the importance of trust, and just spending 2 minutes just talking about how he's very picky with who he lets listen to the effects of the file. And it's kind of ridiculous when you think it's a recording, but it flows so naturally, and it just works so well.
It does. Jade hit the nail on the head there. I have a transcript. I still have to ask Cobalt for permission to like post the transcript, since I don't know what they actually want. I don't know if they actually want it to be public, but they do an excellent job. They just speak in the most plain, equal language. They don't hold any assumptions about you as a person. They say, I will not violate your mind, your trust, or your time. If you think I will, you will stop this recording immediately and tell me what went wrong. He just does the best job of making you trust that he's going to, that he has your best interests in mind. And, that it's paired with, an introduction that tells the user what the file effects will do, and then saying, because I've told you this, you can trust, or because I've told you what I will do and I will follow it, you can trust me. And that is a great thing to include in an induction. And trust building, you should do it. If there's ever a way you find to do it, just do it. There are many ways to do many of the things that many ways to accomplish many of the goals that you would want in an induction. No way is right or wrong until you could specifically judge, okay, this is good. That's why you also want to get peer reviews for your stuff. Anyways, Jade?
Unless we have any questions, you can go into the next session or
section. Yeah. I'm speaking really fast.
You're doing great. You're completely comprehensible. And
okay.
You're doing great.
I am going to get some water though. Jade, can you speak for like 2 minutes?
Sure thing. Do we have any questions? Save me, guys. Blackjack proceeds to mute yourself. All right. What's up, Penny?
Don't know, I'm just here to talk to save time. I don't really have any questions.
It is, since I've absorbed an abhorrently low amount of actual hypnosis content, if you're really familiar with fandom content, you can look at every component of every one of my files, and you may be able to identify its origins if you do a really good job, especially my first 2 scripts, which were the Tulpa Possession and the Modular Transformation series. The Tulpa Possession file, the first 2 paragraphs are a synthesized adaptation of that trust building. And I think that's one of the reasons why my first attempt at a script has gotten a lot of results, is because of that trust building induction. All right, let's see if I can... Oh, you're back quickly. All right.
Yes. The sink is right there. I just didn't want anybody to hear me running the water, because that would be quite an annoying sound. In any case, in terms of writing your inductions, I always say write from the top down. Know what goals you want to have, or what goals should be traditionally established, whether that's traditional induction goals, which is like rapport, acceptance, mental relaxation, or just being at peace with the words. Keep in mind your goals and write based off of that. Try not to copy, but if you find that a phrase is really good and you can't phrase it any better way, write it, go ahead and put it, but understand why it works. Just always knowing why stuff works helps you so much. So there are plenty of guides for hypnosis on the internet. There are definitions, there's, articles for why it works. Learn that, before you learn the language. Heck, you could write a really good induction with just fan fiction writing skills and then a knowledge of what you want to accomplish under hypnosis. It's really that, it's really a trait that you should invest a lot of your time into, is knowing the whys of how you write an induction. And that sort of finishes my rant on inductions. I would go into the deepener next, but I'm going to ask for any more questions.
I'll add one thing, and that's, especially with my psychological reset files, I don't divide it into sections. There's the whole script all the way until the Awakener, you could say, is a huge induction, because all it is I use the air to, throughout the entire script, alter the mindset of the person. Blackjack's given great tips for people who want a structure to go off of writing their first script, but this isn't the only way to do it. You can go no structures, just go, I'm just gonna, there's multiple ways to the same end of hypnosis, but if no one else has anything to say, Blackjack, that was a great synthesis.
Sweet. All right. And one more thing that I'd like to say, having the subject feel comfortable, like relaxation, physical is a good way to do that, but I want to remark another important thing that you should include while writing. Make them feel comfortable with their own progress. Say, very good, or you're doing very well just by listening, or, any way you decide to trance is natural. Hypnosis has worked on others before, why wouldn't it work on stuff like that that'll have the subject not concerned.
So of course it would work on you. I think don't ask the question, so why would it work on you? Well, now I'm thinking about that.
Oh yeah, sorry. That was the specific line from the Daring Do and Derpy and Little Pit Files, actually, from Equestrian Souls. That was actually a bad way to phrase that line.
Who wrote those?
They were a Sweetie Belle at one point, or they were a Vinyl Scratch at one point, and I think they switched to Sweetie Belle, or the other way around. It's like Sweet E Belle with, made like it was an initial, but I haven't been able to find or correctly identify them yet.
I gotcha.
As I hear, they don't want that work to surface again, like under, or at least by their voice. So I'm just going to, I'm actually working on re-releasing those via the transcripts, but it will have my voice on it.
Literally, you're handing them scripts, and they won't even upload it to the site.
Yeah, because I think the main problem is the voice. But yeah, I haven't been able to find you. Bottom line is, I'm going to make the subject feel comfortable with their own progress. Jade?
Yes.
Do you have anything to say so far?
Next session. Next section. Okay. You're doing great.
Okay, deepeners. Now, my understanding of these is that you want to make the subject more susceptible to the following suggestions. So I'm going to I'm actually going to cheat and look at mine. I'm actually going to read this verbatim. All right, this is from this is from the transformation mindset file that surprisingly received like 15 or so votes in the file floating. It was very popular in comparison to the other things. Anyways, by even bringing you down this far, I have planted a seed within your mind. You now have the knowledge of how to trance, regardless of how far you actually are right now. And that knowledge can now act as a template to sink deeper. Go outside your conscious range of thought and look inwards. Find now how the very core of your being can now relax because it knows how well you're doing. Accept that you have unlimited potential to be oh, yes, please break the count. Okay, sorry, I automatically use my hypnosis voice when doing this. My deepest apologies for those of you very susceptible in the crowd. For just in case anybody was actually hypnotized, wake. That, by the way, in regards to countdowns, Wakeners work the same way, in that you can use a snap or a counting up to say that their mind goes up, more conscious. It works by connotation, but I will go ahead and read the rest of this. It's good to navigate this far down. Navigate and change your mind according to your desires and my teachings. We're doing this together. Allow me to guide your desire to listen to transform your mind. Travel down with me and find that every change I suggest becomes easier throughout this session. And then I go through a countdown where I bring up several important points that I'm going to say later in this session. And this sort of goes with continuity, but also having them linked to a countdown, going deeper as you hear these important mindsets, sort of plants the seed of what they're going to do or how they're going to think even farther into their mind. You don't have to use the concepts that you're about to say in the deepener, but just have them be more susceptible to what's coming no matter what. I use several techniques to do this, the countdown, the explicitly saying the mindsets, and then various bits about what their consciousness is going to be like once they do go deeper. But yeah, keywords for deepeners is susceptible, and of course you're going to be using the word deep a few times. Make sure you some way implicitly or explicitly say what deeper is. Like it's, if you say out of nowhere, sink deep, and nobody knows what that means, like at least if some people like previously have the priming of relaxation to deeper, so when you say sink deeper, it'll be like you're saying relax more. I always define it as less conscious and like less analyzing, more accepting. I've brought up those phrases a lot because they're very, very important. Did I do it good?
You did it good. And another great one, this is in the, what was it? The video on Scientology. Scientology always says, clear your mind. That's, for some reason, the video decided that was important. So,
there's something I would like to say actually about clearing your mind. It's a very common misconception with hypnosis that a clear mind is necessary for a trance, or like a blank or thoughtless mind. Not true. Focus is more important, and if you have to mention their thoughts, say like either acknowledge your thought and move on, acknowledge your thoughts and think deeper, or something along the lines of ignore their unimportance right now. My words are more important to you right now than your thoughts.
Building mindfulness. Mindfulness is gaining awareness of your thoughts and feelings by acknowledging the ones that you don't want to focus on and the effort of focusing on the ones you do. I agree. So my ability to trance instantly went from 0 to 100 as soon as I figured out that trance wasn't completely blank, but rather a state of intense and relaxed and calm focus on the words and focusing on bending my mind to the commands. It's not limp inactivity, it's working with and focusing on and working with the person. Yes, Blackjack.
Yes. Okay, something important that I'd like to define. How I differentiated relaxation earlier from trance and hypnosis, and then I differentiated those further into, trance and hypnosis as to it being two distinct concepts. Not everybody does this, and it's being universally understood. But I view trance to be that state of hyperfocus. Trance, the hyperfocus on the words, helps immensely, and it is almost the cornerstone. But I have seen people claim that they can do sessions without the subject ever hyper-focusing on the words. And so I define hypnosis, being hypnotized, separately as bypassing that critical factor in the mind and having the subject accept the words unconditionally. You can do that without hyper-focusing or relaxing physically.
Vulpes says that saying less thoughts, slower thoughts, or proposing one thought or one focus or relaxation is better than suggesting no thoughts. And so a few ways I'm thinking of applying this are by saying, you and I in the scripts I write say stuff like no other thoughts other than my voice and how it makes you feel. So don't focus on anything. You're focusing on something. You need that's a good point, Vulpes. Did I represent what you were trying to say? You can go ahead and speak now.
Yes. Yeah, no, you did.
Yeah, for the most part, sometimes I so slow thoughts, less thoughts. Yeah, exactly. And then say, I just want you to do one thing. Perhaps relax or X, Y, Z, whatever's appropriate. Your script, your induction, and deeper will kind of set the pace.
Mm-hmm. All right. Blackjack, I think we're ready for the next section.
All right, so main suggestions I guess we can do now. Or actually, this will vary immensely, which is why it's such a hard topic to cover. I almost wanted to just go over the mindsets of what transformation is, and as an example, and say how you would accomplish those goals. But it would require quite a bit of setup and explanation. And I'm going to say we have 10 minutes since we started recording exactly at 7 o'clock. So I actually will let you guide me here, Jade. Tell me something to explain, and I'll do it.
I like your quick overviews, and then just go ahead and don't worry about going in detail. Give us TLDR of what you do for the rest of the sections.
Okay, well, main suggestions, I try to, when you're doing the primary suggestions of a file, you want them to seem as reasonable as possible. Always, if you can, justify why they will work. Like you say, this will work, and then this is why this will work. You know this will work. For transformation, for example, it's a form of controlled hallucination that bypasses the mind's way of stopping hallucination. For example, drugs will sort of, in the sort of vein of brain damage versus suppressing memories. Drugs will directly say it will shut that hallucination floodgate off, whereas hypnosis will do it in a controlled form that acts according to the subject's will. And so I usually go based off of the science of transformation and say, your mind reinterprets to feel this way and that, or you don't have to abide by physical space. Your mind could create its own set of perceptions, and it makes sense to the subject, even as far down as they are, so long as it's the right language. And when it makes sense to the subject, they will be so much more likely to accept it. Keep in mind, though, they can accept suggestions without them being explicitly or implicitly justified, but it's generally not as effective. But yeah, it's all about making it make sense. That's the main suggestions in a nutshell. Do I need to explain further?
That was perfect. All right, go ahead and what's the next awakener?
Post-hypnotic suggestions, I'll actually say.
All right.
Yeah, generally the traditionally accepted way suggestions is via a trigger phrase. This is not always necessary. For example, the GearHeart files use a slider, like sort of like a health bar in a video game that works as an analogy, scaling the transformation
visual
up.
Trigger, where you imagine something and you experience the hypnotic effects. And
Yes,
Blackjack,
and it is great.
Yeah.
I've used it in my sessions.
And my favorite post-hypnotic suggestion has to be from PBR that you and I adapted into our identity file, which is seeing things in the real world that remind you of a suggestion. Now you need to be careful with this one because you don't want to randomly.
You don't want it to spiral out of control, basically.
And if you don't want your obedience trigger to be associated by something that's common or non-unique to a person, but if it's something like reinforcing an identity, like a pony one. And you say whenever you see this, you remind yourself that it's a pony. It's such a great hypnotic suggestion. In the real world, it just...
For PBR, it's a good hypnotic suggestion. I wouldn't say it's a safe one overall.
No.
PBR
is a 9. PBR is potentially life-ruining. It convinces you you're a pony. It's wonderful.
But I'll explain why it works anyways, because it is a very good suggestion for the file that it's in. It's just not going to be safe in other files. What you're trying to do, what PBR tried to do, which is pony body reprogramming for any who are familiar with the file, is try to build up the connections in one's mind to function as a pony in everyday life. Whether this meant is by converting to anthro when you need to walk on 2 legs, or having your hooves like an animatronic. Like, she gives several ways to do this. She gives several suggestions of how to impose hooves, and what the basic idea is that you try to build the mental connections that are needed for your minds to imagine being a pony in everyday life and feel everything. This is also part of phantom limb control. You want to have as much exposure, as much to the material of the transformation, so that your mind fully works out how that form would work over your physical body. The more details they have processed, the more effective it can be felt like, or the more effective the transformation can be felt. And having them constantly reminded of ponies, or having that as a trigger, helps immensely with, reminding their mind, hey, you're in this form, process how it would work in the situation you are currently in. But other triggers, phrases, permanent triggers, like permanence, say, like it gets stronger and stronger every time every time you're reminded of it, or every time you're tranced, it'll get stronger. You can do a lot of stuff. You can do a lot of creative stuff with permanence, actually. Normal triggers is kind of a shame have such limited options available to them. Permanence is actually something that it's why I do so many permanent files and transformation-based stuff, is because it's one of the hardest things to make work, and so it requires a lot of creativity and fun stuff to make it work. It challenges me to improve my post-hypnotic suggestions and make them both effective and then safe, according to who's going to be using them.
Yeah, I don't think a single GearHeart file has the standard spoken trigger.
Yeah.
I've done that intentionally. I think it's silly and generally ineffective compared to the other options.
Also, safeties on post-hypnotic suggestions, I have to cover this real quick, I'm sorry, Jade, okay, well, you want it, unless, it's a file specifically meant to be used by others, make it to where they can only be used by the subject or somebody that they trust. If it's such a effects that you only want it to be usable by the subject, specify it clearly. The post-hypnotic suggestions are what's going to actually function in the everyday life. You want them to be absolutely safe. You want to make it to where they're in a safe place, only by the people who should be using it, and only in situations where it should be used, and according to how it should work. Write your post-hypnotic suggestions very in regards to safety. That's all for that. The deezer, I have 3 minutes to explain it, so I'm going to go ahead. Count-ups are the best way, but you can do it without a count-up or finger snaps. You just got to say, hey, your mind is waking up, like prime them in some other way. You usually want them to be awake, refreshed, and alert, etc.
Awakeners are so easy. Don't overthink this. Just say, all right, it's time to wake up. And you can count up. You can go, all right, do you feel yourself becoming wake up? As I use these words with a connotation that makes you feel more awake and aware and alert. And you're up. And it's almost further than that. Or look at what you did in the induction and do the opposite quickly. The awakener's the easy part. All right.
Nothing more to really say on that. Unless you have something important to say, I would like to open this up fully to questions.
Vulpe, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think for the purpose of script writing and being illustrative, I think we're on point. So it's going good.
Thanks for showing up,
Sweet.
everyone. All right. Well, you're all the best.
We'll have to plan another one.
Yep. Hey. I listen to shit that people, as you just said, hey, in file voting, the one that people upvoted the most, you just wrote the file on. Similarly, in file voting, people said, all right, I put 5 suggestions for workshops, and we did the top 3.
Okay.
The only other 2 ideas that I put on there only got 3 upvotes, so we're going to want to go back to the drawing board, and I'll make another pitch for workshops.
File voting?
File voting, I had 3 ones. Group call with community hypnotists talking about how they learned hypno and how they recommend others do so. We did that yesterday. 2, a more in-depth workshop on scripting and hypnostructure. Blackjack and Bullen telling you to help me with this. Just hit it. 3, had a sound engineer hypno. Did that. The other 2, no one seems to care about, which is video production / YouTube channel management and leading and managing a hypno creation team, which I don't blame. Those are super niche. Wait, let me see who upvoted those.
We should have an editing and voicing workshop sometime, but when we get more editors and voicers, which we don't really
We need editors.
Yes, we need editors. I know there are plenty of people who are good at it. They're just sort of hard to find, given the size of given the relative startup-ish feel of GearHeart.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll get it done though. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Okay.